Hi, everybody, and welcome back to video number 2 on Chapter 8. When we left off, we were looking at the um, two limitations of the lower of cost or market. This approach begins with the replacement cost, then it applies two additional limitations to value ending inventory. Net realizable value is going to be the ceiling, and net realizable value less a normal profit is going to be the floor. So let's see how that works. Net realizable value is the estimated selling price in the ordinary course of business, less any reasonable, predictable cost of completion and disposal. A company values inventory at the lower of cost or market, with market limited to an amount that is not more than net realizable value or less than net realizable value less a normal profit margin. Okay, let's take a look at Parker Corporation. It has unfinished inventory with an estimated selling price of $1,000. Estimated cost of completion and disposal, $300. And a normal profit margin of 10% of sales. The net realizable value and net realizable value less a normal profit margin is calculated as follows. Here's our $1,000 based on estimated selling price, but we have some estimated cost of completion and disposal here of $300, so our net realizable value, $700. Now, our allowance for a normal profit margin is 10% of sales. So we take 10% of $1,000, that's $100, and subtract that from $700 to get $600 net realizable value less a normal profit margin. So now let's assume Costco paid $1,000 for an infrared sauna that it can now purchase for $900. The net realizable value of the sauna is $700. Costco should use the $700 net realizable value as the ceiling. This is the amount it could receive upon disposal. To report the replacement cost of $900 overstates the ending inventory and understates the loss for the period. Okay. Now, inventory valuation, lower of cost or market. So here's our lower of cost or market under GAAP, right? Here's our cost and our market. But it can't be more than the ceiling, which is the net realizable value, replacement cost, and then net realizable value less the normal profit margin, which is the floor, not less than that. So we have a floor here and a ceiling here, and that will be our market. So let's take a look at that. Coming back to the illustration we did earlier in the chapter, here's our replacement costs, our net realizable value, that's the ceiling, and then the net realizable value less a normal profit margin, that's the floor. So our designated market value then is going to be 104,000. That's our floor. The cost here would be the designated market value when the cost falls between $170,000. And the cut beans we would pick up the net realizable value of 40,000 here. as it's the ceiling. And then the P's, the 36,000, the 48,000 here would represent our designated market value. And then finally, the mixed vegetables, the ceiling, 92,000, is smaller than the replacement cost and greater than the floor. So we would pick up the ceiling for that. So for each food category then, the designated market value in red is the middle value among replacement cost, net realizable value, and net realizable value less a normal profit margin. All right. Now, if we come back to that Whole Foods information illustration again, that we did earlier in this presentation, the final inventory for each food category is the lower value between cost and designated market value. So this one was pretty easy. We did that before, 350,000. We compare cost to designated market value, which we have calculated here in the prior slide. Okay. Now, the disadvantages of lower of cost or net realizable value and lower of cost or market rules. So the major disadvantages, there's a mismatch in valuation. A company recognizes decreases in the value of the asset and the charge to expense in the period in which the loss in utility occurs, not in the period of sale. On the other hand, it recognizes increases in the value of the asset only at the point of sale. In other words, a company may value the inventory at cost in 1 year and then at market or net realizable value in the next year. There's a mismatch in income potentially, and net income for the year in which a company takes the loss is lower. Net income of the subsequent period may be higher than normal if the expected reductions in sales price do not materialize. And lastly, the use of estimates. Application of these rules uses normal profit or ordinary costs to sell or dispose in determining inventory values. Since companies develop these estimates based on past experience, which they may not attain in the future, this subjective measure presents an opportunity for income manipulation. Okay, let's take a look here at Fowler Golf. Now, Fowler Golf uses LIFO and lower of cost or market. So here's the historical cost, the selling price, the cost to complete, the current replacement cost, and the normal profit margin for its golf bags, shoes, and rain suits. The ceiling and floor that should be used in the lower of cost or market will compute for golf bags here. So how would we do that? Let's look. Here, and then on Bravo, they're going to ask us to the designated market value that should be used in the lower of cost or market comparison for shoes, and then in Charlie, the lower of cost or market for rain suits. So under Alpha here, the ceiling and floor that should be used for the lower of cost or market computation for golf bags. And so here's our selling price, $212. We had another $19 needed here to complete. So we're going to subtract that to get to the ceiling of $193. Then The floor for the golf bag is $161, and that's the net realizable value less the normal profit margin. And that normal profit margin, let's go back, is going to be $32. So we'll subtract that $32 from $193, and that gives us the floor of $161. Okay, so under Bravo here, the designated market value that should be used in the lower of cost or market comparison for shoes. So the designated market value was $108, net realizable value. And we determine that by taking the selling price less the cost to complete. That's $137. But our normal profit margin, given in the problem here for shoes, $29, we'll subtract that from $137 to get $108. And that's going to be our designated market. Replacement cost is $105. And lastly, Charlie here, the lower of cost or market for rain suits. And so the lower of cost or market for rain suits is $151. That's going to be the replacement cost. Its designated market value, which is less than the historical $53. Okay, the designated market value is determined as follows. We'll start out here with the selling price less the cost to complete, $2.50. That gives us $71.25. Designated market is the $51 we talked about, the replacement cost. And so the net realizable value less the normal profit margin here is going to be $50, $71.25 less $21.25, which is given in the problem here. Okay, now let's look now at identifying some other inventory valuation issues. Here, valuation at net realizable value is permitted by GAAP when all of the following conditions are met. 1, a controlled market with a quoted price applicable to all quantities. And 2, no significant costs of disposal. And 3, the product is available for immediate delivery. Okay, let's look at Woodland Developers. They purchased land for $1 million that it will subdivide into 400 lots. Area Alpha has 100 lots, which will sell for $1 million. That's 100 times $10,000. Area B has 100 lots with a sales price of $600,000, $100 times $6,000. And Area Charlie has 200 lots with a sales price of $900,000. That's 200 lots times $4,500 per lot. The sales prices across the areas vary based on the view afforded by each lot of an adjacent lake. Area Charlie has no view of the lake. Area Bravo has a partial view, and Area Alpha has an unobstructed view of the lake. Okay, that looks like a good place for us to stop this video. And when we return, we'll look at putting some dollars to the cost per lot using the relative sales value method. Until that time, bye for now.